So this is a video interview you guys do not want to miss. This is Higher Self, and his name is Paul, but his artist producer name is Higher Self. And Paul reached out to me, I think it was probably about a year ago or maybe more, and he had been a touring DJ and artist producer, and he was starting to want to get a little away from the touring world. And he has some huge names he's toured with, and just to name a few of them, he's toured with David Guetta. He's actually played on the sets with David Guetta. He's done EDC in the States, so pretty much the biggest electronic dance festival that's happened on planet Earth. He was a part of that. Oliver Heldens, he's actually worked with him. He's been touring actually since the 90s, so this is over 20 years of experience. So pretty much the biggest names in the business, Paul Higher Self has been around it, okay? And so he's actually surrounded himself in there. But at some point, he wanted to try something new, go to a new direction. And so he had heard about sync licensing. He stumbled into some of my videos. He'd reached out, and we actually had a talk like this, but we didn't record it. It was about a year or so ago. And Paul was kind of dabbling and thinking about getting into sync licensing, but he wasn't really sure, if it's something he wanted to be publicly telling people that he was doing. He was still sort of in that testing phase. But now I'm really happy to see that Paul has conquered this industry very quickly, actually. Just like he did with the touring side of things, he has now gone into sync licensing, and he has secured some huge placements, some huge sync fees, some national and maybe even international placements. We'll talk about some of those specifics, but a lot of success in a very short amount of time. So first, what we're going to do is I want Paul to just share his story, why he made that move, what that transition was like. But the most important thing that you guys need to get out of this conversation is his mindset, okay? This is a very rare person you're going to talk to or listen to today. This is somebody who has learned through the experience of his life to eliminate fear completely, to completely go boldly into new ventures and to embrace new adventures and to have confidence that he's going to succeed in whatever field he gets into. You're going to hear about the proof that he's gone into. So that's what he's going to share with us today, is his mindset and what got him to where he got to with sync licensing so quickly. So I'm always, first of all, a student with this channel, and I love learning from you guys. So I'm so happy that Paul reached out to me, and he's here to share with us his story and what really worked for him. So, Paul, thanks so much for joining us today, man. Why don't you let us know a little bit about your history with touring and music in general?
Thanks for the intro. Like you said, I've been in the game, the music game, for a long time now. When I was at school, I just knew that I was going to do music. At first, I wasn't a producer, I was a DJ. And when I was 12 years old, I got a set of decks, which I swapped for a motocross bike. And from that, I never looked back. I was mad about music. So we got to about 16 years old and I started producing. And then basically it's all grown from there. At that time, I was into a genre which was called hard house, which is quite old now, but I did that, and there was some big labels at the time like Tidy Tracks and stuff, and my goal was to get onto that. They were the biggest label in that genre. So that was my target, and I managed to achieve that. And then as the genres and as the times grew, I just moved with them, musically, as things change. And I've gone through different genres of house, mainly all dance music orientated. Never really got into the dubstep thing. That wasn't for me, but house orientated music basically. And then that all culminated in the last few years, like you said, touring with David Guetta, remixing, working for Spinning Record, which is the biggest dance label in the world, releasing music through Warner, Sony, Universal, Atlantic Records, remixing some big artists, and just basically achieved my dream, what I wanted to do. Then it came to, let's say, 2017, and I realized the whole scene was changing, music was changing, the atmosphere. It used to be about DJing, and then it became more about being a social media guru, and I just wasn't. I'm not that person. I like to make the music. I like to as time went on, I enjoyed the music process more than the show. So I realized that I don't want to do the shows anymore. Even though I did some amazing things, played some of the biggest things I could ever imagine, I felt like I'd done that now. And for me, I wanted to do something different, which is when we first spoke. And I was just kind of stumbled into music licensing. It wasn't even something I even knew about, to be honest with you. It didn't even cross my mind until 2017, where my partner was actually at work, and she met a girl that she worked with, her partner was an executive at a library, and he basically well, she said it's very hard to get in there. I doubt they're going to want, basically didn't know what kind of level I was at. And then they listened to some music, and I got in straight away. And then basically from there, like you said, I landed a big commercial, literally with my first 2 weeks in the industry. I know I watch all your videos, and I know that's rare. I know you say to people not to, but that's what happened. And then that was my sign, as if, right, okay, if I can earn this much money for 16 seconds of music as it was, then this is the game for me. And that was it. I never looked back from then.
And that was it was a cereal commercial or something like that?
No, the first one was for a banking app, actually. It was okay. It was for I won't name the company.
No, that's fine.
It was for a banking app for transferring money in the States through the major banks. That was the first one I did. The second one I did was a cereal.
Oh, okay. That was the one that I remember we talked about. So if you can also, like, since then, what are some other projects that you've landed that you like, I know that you've expected the success. That's what we're going to dive into at the end here. But I also want you to talk about what have you done since those first couple of weeks, how your career in licensing has progressed.
Well, what I've done is the people that I work with, I've looked at what music they've got. I've seen what they don't have. And then I've said, look, I think you need this. Because obviously the reason that I've got this outlook is because to be an artist and be successful over a long period of time, you have to be a chameleon. You have to see the game before the game has arrived to be successful. So basically, if I've got an ear for where trends are going to go, I want to make that trend before someone else. So then when that trend appears, I already got loads of it. And that's how you're successful in the music game. A lot of people follow trends, but then you're already behind the curve. So you need to be the trendsetter, which isn't easy. That takes a lot of experience, and it also takes a lot of guts, because you're trusting yourself that how you feel in your gut, that what you think needs to be done, you should do it. Like when I landed the first jobs, I said, look, to the people that I work with, there's a gap here, and I think you should do X, Y, and Z. And they said, yeah, go for it. And it just so happens the first track that I did landed the cereal commercial. So like, it's trusting yourself. You've got to trust yourself. If you've got, again, that takes experience. I don't think everybody's got that naturally straight away. That's years of practice and of seeing where things are going, because music is cyclical. So you can see trends, and you can see, in the music industry, when I was doing it as an artist, that's what I would do. So I tried to bring that same thing into the licensing, basically. So
it's interesting you bring that up, because, the big buzzword in our business here is authenticity. Everybody wants a track that feels authentic. Well, what does that really mean? I think you've just described it perfectly, where it's like you're not just copying the sound of the day or just the artist that has the top track out there on the top 50 charting, but you are actually being true to yourself, right? You might be bringing a very contemporary, modern, accessible sound, but you're also bringing yourself, right? Like you said, you're trusting yourself. You're going to bring something really unique, something really that's just basically resonating with you. And that's one of those things that when people, you can't really put your finger on it. You really don't know what it is. But when you hear something, you just go, there's just a lot of personality in this. There's just a lot of authentic feeling or emotion or something in there. And that's usually because you're able to get in tune and basically in tune with your own emotions and your own spirit and your own creative juices, essentially. And I actually wanted to, if you don't mind, showing you your tattoo that you have on your arm, because I actually didn't know what that word meant and the origins of it. And maybe that could actually help describe a little bit about how you do what you do.
Can you see it?
Gotcha.
It says inspire, but that means in spirit. So basically, when you're inspired, you're channeling. Basically, when you're not bringing the music in, when you're overthinking things, you'll notice the inspiration goes away. When you're letting things come through you, in my opinion, this is how I've done it. Then I do my best stuff. All my best tracks took no time at all. Like the things that take 2 or 3 hours end up being the biggest hits, because at the end of the day they were just flowing, and that's it. When you're sat there spending days and days on things, usually it's not going to be very good. That's just the way it is, unless you're a crazy perfectionist, which in this game you're taking too long anyway. So like you've got to be quick, you've got to have quality, but at the same time, you've got to let it come through you. You know, that's what music is. Music is a process, but the process, you're chosen. Like if you're good at music, you don't choose to be good at music. Like to have a career as an artist, to have something different, all those people have that. If they don't have that thing that comes through them where they trust their gut and do what they think, if they don't, you know, that's how you be successful. That's how you end up on the big labels and touring the world. If you've got to trust your instincts, and obviously if you're born with it, then you're lucky and make the most of it. But yeah, just don't overthink things.
Absolutely. I will add to that too, that like, you know, that feeling of being in spirit, inspired, you know, and really, I've had that since I was a little kid. When I first picked up a guitar, or even when I was just listening to music, I would hear melodies. There would just be things coming to me all the time. And I think all of us watching this podcast, this interview, we all have felt that at some point in our lives. And the crucial thing, especially when it comes to sync licensing, is just getting the skills and maybe sometimes, you know, the plugins, the hardware, just having the right tools so that when inspiration hits and when you're in that place that's really good and you're healthy and you're ready to just let that energy or that creative idea come through you, it's just like breathing. You know, it's like second nature. You know exactly where to find your right kicks, the right sounds, the right this, the right that. It's like basically if you were a painter and you had this vision of this massive, you know, incredible a painting you wanted to do, but then you went to go to your supply cabinet and you had no paintbrushes, no paint, you had nothing there. You know, you'll lose the inspiration, and that sort of idea, that vision goes away, and then you're not feeling that there's this thing that you can do. So a lot of it has to do with having the right tools, but of course, on top of that, knowing how to use those tools. So a lot of what we teach here, you know, obviously with Sync Academy and the tutorials that I put together, is really about like that technical knowledge about like, here's some of the sort of rules that you should be aware of in sync licensing, and here's some common things for how to make sure that your mixes are, you know, loud enough and that your samples that you're using feel lifelike enough and they're not like robotic and MIDI kind of, you know, computerized sounding, but actually have some sort of a human emotional feel to it. Or we talk about dynamics or transitions between sections. So these are all technical details though, and that's why I've said in so many of my tutorials, pretty much everyone I can think of, is I'd say, I'm not here to tell you how to make your music. That's for you to decide. And I think, Paul, with your Inspire tattoo, that's exactly what we're talking about here, is that I can't give you inspiration. Like, I really can't do that for you. You have to be in tune with yourself, be in tune with the universe, be in tune with whatever your creative muse is, whatever your source of inspiration is. And you have to channel that. But what I can do and help you with, and hopefully you guys are all getting this, is the technical skills, maybe the business knowledge, maybe just the fundamental understanding of what a strategy to succeed in this business is. But when it comes down to trusting yourself and trusting your creative output and your creative process, nobody can teach you that kind of stuff. You got to just, like Paul says, you got to just trust yourself and get into that really warm place. Now, I do want to ask you, Paul, you have a very unique mindset, right? Your mindset has been all about opening yourself up to possibilities, and not only opening yourself up, but am I wrong in mistaking that you expect success with everything that you do?
Well, you have to. If you don't expect success, then you're not going to get success. You know, you can't think one thing and expect the opposite. It doesn't work. It's counterintuitive. So if you go into anything, I mean, from day one, I was determined to be successful as a DJ. And then as time progressed, I wanted to be successful as a producer. Then I've gone into the sync licensing. I want to be successful in sync licensing. I've had success in the other industries, so why shouldn't I expect success now? It's not an arrogance. It's just that if I don't even believe in myself, then who else is going to believe in me? That's the key. And that's the same. Even when you're starting out, you know, you have to have a flame in the bottom of your belly that's going to gradually get brighter and brighter until, you know, the flame can't be denied. And that just takes practice. But at the same time, you have to believe in you when maybe other people don't, because you're going to get knocked and you're going to get doubts and you're going to lose belief in yourself at certain points. But that's all to make you stronger. And you just keep going, and eventually it'll come. It always does. It's just perseverance and belief. And it's so easy to give in. Like, most people just give in. Whenever they get challenged or have a bit of failure, they give in. And it just doesn't get you anywhere. I know it's easy to say, and it's a lot harder to do. But everybody that's been successful does that.
Yeah.
If they don't, they're not successful. It's as simple as that, really.
Yeah, and it's you're right. Very much easier said than done. I'm right now learning about affirmations. So this is something where you can do it in so many different ways. You can write something down, multiple times a day. You can do what I'm doing right now is actually I'm getting little post-it notes of powerful phrases of my goals that I want to get accomplished, or personal things that I want to just remind myself of, or something just to lift my spirit and make me feel better. And I'm literally posting them all throughout my house. So when I go to the bathroom, there are like post-it notes all over the place. When I go make breakfast, there's post-it notes there. On the fridge here, right on my computer screen, I have post-it notes all over the place. So what I'm doing is that, like, and it's not that I'm just like, making myself look at these things every day, but every time I walk by, like in the hallway, I have a couple that are posted there. Every time I walk by, it just catches my eye and I read it. And I go, oh yeah, that's a thing that I'm doing. So I'm trying to actively, right, put myself in a place to increase my expectation of success, just like you've done, Paul. So I am trying to elevate myself to that point of, if we don't actively make this choice. So some people like you, maybe you could just in your mind, I don't know if you wrote down affirmations or did anything else, or maybe just in your mind, you were just like, nah, I'm going to succeed. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough, but I'm just going to get there. But for me, I do that as well. I have like a visualizing process of like, okay, I visualize my future life, what success looks like, and I try to just live there as much as possible. And I find that that's very useful. But I also know that because our brains are so ridiculous, all right? Like, Paul, that your brain will just come up with all these random ideas, sometimes very negative, right? You go in these negative spirals. And sometimes when we don't actively put something positive there, we're just defaulting to whatever our brains want us to think about that day. So what I'm trying to do, and I want to get your take on this, Paul, is I'm trying to actively put positive things, positive reminders around myself, and also eliminate things that were harmful for me, taking away certain kind of media consumption that was not bringing me to a better place, and replacing it with some books that I want to read, or some better content, something like that, right? Or, audio books, podcasts, that kind of thing. And I'm trying to basically fill my mind up with as much positive, you can do it sort of stuff as I possibly can, so that I'm basically eliminating as much of that space even that could allow for negativity to come in.
Yeah. No, I think that's very important anyway. I mean, I don't watch the news. I mean, at the moment, you have to see what's going on, obviously, with the coronavirus, but to keep that to a minimum. One thing that I do, which I highly recommend, is whenever you have a positive thought, or whenever you have a negative thought, usually there's a positive opposite. Now, most people will always revert to anything to the negative first. So if I approach this library, what if they turn me down? If I send stuff to this supervisor, what if they turn me down? But what if you start thinking the opposite? Now, what if they accept me? What if they accept it? Now, once you start changing your mind instead of reverting to the negative, because I guarantee 90% of the people watching this will revert to negative first. Now, once you flip it and start thinking but what's the worst that can happen, really, but what's the best that can happen, then your world will flip on its head, because then all of a sudden you're thinking the best all the time. And it's not always going to go that way, but sometimes it will. So why should you think that it should always be the negative? Why does that make sense? It doesn't. But it's just the way that the mindset is for a lot of people. And that's something, it's not an easy thing, I know, because it's a lifetime of thinking that way. But you have to try and think, what's the worst that can happen, really? But also, what's the best that can happen? If I don't put myself out there, then I'm never going to get anywhere. And even with me, I'm approaching, some of the major libraries, the big ones, without mentioning names. And that's nervy. That's nervy for me. But I've just done something for somebody for the first time, and a big one. And basically, that was still unnerving, but I did it. And I got somewhere out of it. So that's my advice. It's just that whenever you're thinking, what if this, I'm not good enough, this, that, and the other, then how can you expect to get anywhere? It's counterintuitive. If you don't believe in yourself and you don't think you're going to do it, you won't do it. That's it.
I like that. And I like that, weighing the pros and cons. Like the worst case, like if you, like, especially with that, like, you're submitting to a library, like people are always worried, like, well, what if they reject me? Okay, what's the worst thing you're going to have happen to you? They're literally going to email you. I think literally the worst thing will happen is they'll email you and go, thank you for your submission. We're not interested at this time. That's pretty much the worst thing. They're not going to say, your music sucks. Why did you even send us this crap? I guarantee you nobody's going to say that to you, okay? Maybe they'll ignore you. Maybe that would be worse for you, okay? Maybe that would be your worst scenario. They just won't even respond to me, and I don't know if there'll be no closure, right? I don't know if they even got it. Should I keep bothering them? Maybe that's your worst, okay? So let's just be real. That could be on the worst column. And what's the best possible scenario? You get accepted, of course, and you start a sync licensing career, which is so much bigger than a temporary, well, that kind of didn't feel good because they didn't like my music or they didn't accept me or they just ignored me or maybe my email got lost in their spam folder, right? These all hurt. They don't feel good, but they're all temporary. The plus side is potentially decades of success working with this company, right? And then, of course, expanding your horizons to work with other companies, getting more experience, getting sync fees like Paul has gotten. So when you look at it that way, you go like, I can't afford not to take this shot, right? The cons are so small. There's really not much risk here at all. Yeah, my ego is going to get a little bruised, but this upside is, oh my gosh, this could be incredible. So I like that. That really does, for even me listening to that, like that really does help. Just putting things in real perspective and not letting, as Paul said, letting those negative thoughts be the only thing you consume, right? Well, what if they reject me? What if they don't like it? What if they ignore me? And then you don't do the flip side of those. You just stay here, and that's when the spiraling, because then you go, well, then maybe that means I'm not a good producer. And then that also means maybe I shouldn't have a career in sync licensing. So maybe this has all been a waste of time. And by the way, maybe everything I've done in my life is a waste of time, right? So this stuff just starts spiraling and spiraling. So
yeah. One of those feelings expands you, and the other one restricts you. One of them makes your consciousness or your possibilities grow exponentially, and the other one puts you in a box. Do you want to be in the box or do you want to grow? That's all you have to think when you're having those thoughts. That's my opinion on that.
That's it, man. Paul, thank you so much, man. I'm pretty sure we're going to have you back. Hopefully you will grace us with your presence in the future. Maybe we'll do a longer podcast episode or something like that in the future. But I'm also putting together and thinking about putting together a completely new form of content that's going to be more centered around this mental stuff. Because I know most producers, like you said, I think you're absolutely right about. It's like probably 90% of us are stuck in negativity, and it's just like you said, because we've had negative experiences, negative childhoods, negative school systems, negative everything, and it's really about kicking a really bad habit. Just a lot of bad thinking, and nobody really giving us a better way to think or an alternative way to think, at least. So I think this is a really important thing that we should dive into. Obviously, you're somebody that has a lot of experience and a lot of proof, right? You have a lot of results. Hopefully, you guys are seeing that. This is a guy that's not just saying this because he read it in a book. This is what he's lived. This is actually his life experience of changing his mind and therefore changing his life. His whole life has gotten better because of this mindset shift. So we will definitely talk to you again in the future, Paul. So thank you so much for your time today. If you had one last bit of advice or something you can give to people who are new or thinking about getting into sync licensing, what would that be?
Go for it, and believe in yourself. I mean, that's the key to everything. And if anybody's saying you can't do it, then just believe you can. You don't need somebody else to tell you what you can do. You just need to believe it yourself. It doesn't matter who's around you questioning you, telling you otherwise. None of that matters. None of that matters. And I know people get affected by things like this, especially when you're in a household. Maybe your wife doesn't want you to do it and you're at work all day or whatever. But, if you never take the chance, like I said, one side, you're in a box forever. The other side, you're in potential of everything. So which way do you want to go? And if you think about that in your day-to-day life as well, then your life's going to get a lot better, Stay in the box or keep growing. You choose. The end.
I like that, man. And that's empowering. That gives us the choice, right? We're no longer victims in this thing. We can actually have the power to decide what kind of life we want to live. So everybody watching, please, I want you to comment below. Okay, so I want to hear your story. I want to know what you struggle with. What are your negative thoughts? What are the things that keep getting in your way? Okay, so please don't just watch this video and have your story, keeping it to yourself. Obviously, spare any details you don't want to have out there on the internet or anything like that. But I love hearing that you guys are resonating with this stuff and this is actually useful and helpful. And I want to do anything I can to possibly serve you guys to give you more encouragement and alternative ways of thinking so you can get past these moments of self-doubt and really self-sabotage is really what a lot of us are doing out there. So we want to make sure that we stop that and start going to a place of more productivity. So don't be shy and make sure you leave a comment below.